Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. Are you ready for intrigue, scandal, sedition, UBI, and ice cream? We've got it all in today's episode. Well, yesterday's episode. Shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Peter Park, Shay Meehan, and Nathan Stankowski, as well as all our other patrons. You keep us all informed and engaged. If anyone out there wants to join these advocates of humanity first and independent journalism, head on over to patreon.com/YangDaily. It would only take a couple of bucks a month from each listener to keep this podcast and community going and growing into the future. On to the news. Hundreds of National Guard have tested positive for COVID after being forced into close confines in order to protect Congress from Trump's delusional mob. Considering many legislators contracted COVID from GOP colleagues who refused to wear masks in lockdown, and the Guard earlier asked that legislators stop interacting with them without masks and social distancing, I think it's safe to say that the GOP are infecting our military with this dangerous virus the same way they've infected the rest of the country. Not the best way to support the troops. In the latest evidence of Trump's attempt to overthrow democracy, the New York Times says that 4 Justice Department employees reported to them that Trump tried to replace former Attorney General Barr's replacement, Acting Attorney General Rosen, after he also refused to push seditious conspiracy theories of election fraud. According to the sources, the only thing that stopped the replacement of Rosen with a Trump loyalist was the entire DOJ staff committing to resign. Otherwise, the DOJ would have been used to support Trump's attacks on Georgia and the electoral certification. His co-conspirator was lawyer Jeffrey Clark. Another new article from the New York Times studies the timeline of unemployment in the U.S. to examine the trends in how long it takes people to get unemployment insurance and how long they remain unemployed. The results are not good. There is a very strong downward trend in the duration of unemployment aid alongside a very strong upward trend in the duration of unemployment, meaning it's taking longer for people to find new jobs, but they are getting less income support during it. The percent of lost wages covered and the percent of unemployed people who receive it have also declined. In 2019, only 27% of unemployed workers received any benefits on average in the U.S. New Jersey is the highest in the country with a paltry 60%. In Arizona, nearly 70% of UI applications are denied. Only 15% of the unemployed get anything in that state. Florida, as usual, somehow manages to do worse, with only 10% getting benefits, as well as only giving out $275 per week for as little as 12 weeks to those who do get anything. It's a result of the taxes which find UI trending flat or downward. States have partial control over the tax rates for UI, and they have been competing for low rates to attract businesses, leading to a race to the bottom for the funding mechanism for unemployment insurance. And the states often respond to the shortfall in funding by making it harder to apply for UI so they don't have to spend as much on it, resulting in less people using it and them not having to spend as much. It's a perfect solution, aside from all the people who get screwed. On top of that, new jobs are almost entirely gig, contract, or temp work, which the UI system created for the economy of the 1930s does not recognize. As Scott is fond of saying, the U.S. safety net is full of holes. Ron Wyden, the incoming chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, proposed putting federal UI on autopilot, tied to metrics of economic health. This is called an automatic stabilizer and was in some of the emergency UBI proposals. U.S. legislators Bayer, Kilmer, Reed, and Bennett have designed similar plans. Janet Yellen, Biden's Treasury Secretary, has said that struggling Americans need relief and support for as long as the job market remains weak. You know what's the best economic stabilizer? One that never goes away. Instead of trying to adjust to every change in everyone's circumstances, maybe just don't. Maybe just always provide at least the bare minimum that anyone needs. Maybe call it UBI. Entrepreneur Nick Hanauer also put out a deep thread arguing for the minimum wage, in which he made a lot of good points, and also the interesting proposal to make it flexible but dependent on the size of the business rather than on geography. While I certainly support a higher minimum wage over nothing, since learning of UBI, I can never see it as anything but an inferior alternative. Minimum wage, like other welfare programs, are crutches to maintain poverty and wage slavery. They make it bearable, but they don't solve the problem, and they distort market forces in the process. It makes a lot more sense to simply solve the root issue of poverty by issuing a federal minimum income, and then let the free market finally work the way it was ideally intended to. Compensation that takes job quality into account, true cost of human labor, incentivizing automation of work that humans don't want to do, workers who are free from exploitation, people able to pursue their passions, volunteer work made viable, everyone able to get what they need, and the market able to get proper feedback of what to produce and the value of products. Anyway, I could go on about how UBI creates a true free market economy for days. If you want my full thoughts, check the link below for a 2-page write-up. Mayors for a Guaranteed Income have put a full-page ad in the Washington Post arguing for emergency UBI and signed by all, now, 34 mayors. Hot dog. Robert Ayers and Jeroen Vandenberg also put out a paper laying out the case for UBI, in which they envision $900 a month for adults and a sliding scale up for kids under 18. They argue for funding it primarily via the repeal of both Trump and Reagan tax cuts, and the addition of a number of new taxes similar to Yang's proposal, such as a 5% value-added tax, a 10% carbon tax, and a 5% land tax. The most interesting was a tax on the use of the electromagnetic spectrum, i.e. digital transmissions. They propose a small tax on all use of the internet, saying it would raise revenue, reduce bandwidth clogging, and punish spammers. They say that it's important to pass all of this as a package so as to prevent special interest groups from defeating each item individually, and that it should be progressively phased in, starting small and building up to the proposed amounts. It's all broken down in their paper, which is in the links as always. I'm happy to announce that the fundraiser event hosted by Evelyn brought in a whopping $18,000 from small donors. Shouldn't be surprised, everybody loves Evelyn. And finally, what do Andrew Yang, The Daily Show, Dippin Dots, and COVID have in common? Give up? COVID vaccine. No, Yang and Noah are not sponsoring a vaccine flavor of Dippin Dots. And no, it's not what first came to my mind when I saw the article titled Why Dippin Dots Might Have a Place in COVID Vaccine Distribution, which was somebody pouring a cup of dots into their mouth only to get injected by a hidden syringe. What it is mobile refrigeration currently used for ice cream but potentially could be used for transporting the vaccine. Yang has proposed that this option be considered, and it's triggered his newest scandal, as Noah called him out for stealing an idea that he had floated already on his own show. Okay, it wasn't really a scandal, it was just a joke, though some people seem to have missed the sarcasm. Personally, I think Andrew had better make Noah his third co-chair of his campaign, both as an apology and for access to these dank policy bombs. Who knows what else he's got up his sleeve. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Bookmark and share the UI data, critique my argument for UBI achieving the ideals of capitalism, send some love to Markey, flood Congress with calls, tweets, faxes, and letters using the Resist bot or Income Movement easy contacts below. If you need help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, United Way, or the H3 podcast thread, and don't forget to Yang Daily.